Welcome to the Linebreak Rugby podcast. I'm me, your host, Sav. Today we have a host, we have a host of people who were going to be here and then ended up being sick. So we had to bring in the recruitment team, or the backups, in Euan, our Scottish national, who actually knows a lot more about Scottish rugby. Do you want to say hi, Euan?
Hi, I'm Euan, also known as HMFCalltheway on Reddit, but that's a bit of a mouthful. So are we going to talk about who's impressed us this last weekend and who caught the eye?
See, you can he's a fan of the show. He knows what he's doing. Yeah, we're going to talk about players of the weekend. And essentially who we think needs a bit of improvement maybe, but I don't know if we're going to focus much on that. We're going to focus perhaps on the more impressive players of the weekend, and we're going to just start with the obvious, I think, with Conor Murray playing fantastically for Ireland.
Yeah, and they really orchestrated completely outmatching Aaron Smith, which is a surprising thing. You wouldn't usually expect that against the All Blacks.
And that's
and his replacement came on and did far better than him afterwards. So it might have been to an extent that Conor Murray was going against a poor Aaron Smith, and when TG Perenara came on, it wasn't as much of a mismatch, but it was still impressive.
It was,
especially.
It was very impressive. There was a point where the kick went across. I can't remember who put it downfield, but the chase from Murray to put New Zealand back over their own line and force Sevilla into a mistake was brilliant. Normally Sevilla would brush off a scrum half tackle, but Murray wasn't having any of it.
It was also I guess Sevilla was this when it was kicked over the try line and Sevilla was trying to clear it. He was completely flustered with that. He's not one of those best sort of clearing sort of wins. He's really just run with the ball in hand and destroy someone sort of thing, and that doesn't really work so well in that situation as well. But
100%.
He was really not prepared for that.
But I think so. If we have a look at the box kicking that Murray was doing, we have a look at his decision making and that sneaky little try that he scored. Or the sneaky break. Anyway, it was just all round. It was just brilliant. He was. I don't know if he made a bad decision. I'm trying to think back if there was ever a bad decision he made.
No, I can't think of anything. There weren't anywhere near as many errors in the Irish backline as there were in the All Blacks. But the All Blacks were trying to play their kind of brand of rugby, so it's gonna. If they're not clicking, then they're going to make more mistakes. Number of knock-ons and that they had in the last 60 minutes or so when they were trying to get back into it before the final Irish try that sort of sealed it. That was quite bad, but that wasn't the scrum half of that. But the Irish were far more clinical with the ball in hand.
It was fantastic to watch. I think my number one take home from the New Zealand loss is that they actually need a proper second row.
Yeah,
because their line out.
They do usually, but the injuries have completely destroyed that.
Their line out was pretty shocking, and without that steady carry in midfield, and I don't know, just security of having Retallick and Whitelock on the pitch, it just wasn't good enough.
Scott Barrett really improved things when he came on a bit. Well, to an extent, he was quite impressive.
Yeah, he did what he could, but it was all backward step really. From some points.
What's happened to Romano and Dominic Bird? Are they both injured at the moment? Because I was wondering where they were.
I'm assuming they're just not. I'm not sure. Maybe they're just not picked.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure about that.
Because Romano was involved in some of the rugby championship games, but I'm not sure if he got injured or not.
I think Hansen. I don't know, Romano's getting a bit old maybe, and Hansen maybe was just thinking, look, Kano can play lock, even though he suddenly couldn't. Here we go, I've just looked it up. So he's had a family death by the looks of it.
Oh, I remember that.
So he pulled out.
Yeah.
There you go. So, yeah, that would be the problem. So they really did have a complete absence of locks in their squad.
How much has Kano played for the Blues in the lock position?
I don't think he's played there at all.
Because the Blues, their pack, they've got some brilliant backs, but then they've got a few good young flankers and that coming through. So I guess.
But they got Luatua at 8 as well.
Yeah, Luatua at 8. Who can also play lock.
Who also can genuinely play lock for the All Blacks. So. they have got a good selection there. But again, if we go back to talking about Ireland and how, I mean, people were really not enjoying the selection that Joe made beforehand. I mean, Carney playing.
Carney's I watched him in the last Pro Tour final, and he was just past it for that. It seemed like he's not the sort of electric player he used to be.
He doesn't dominate the air as much as he used to, which was his main strength. And and if you're not doing what you are known for, then are you really worthy of being on the pitch? I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah. But having said that, obviously he's had a good game in the end. There were, as New Zealand were coming back, and as we all saw them coming back, Carney was the one that people were pinning the blame on for the tries. Missing his one-on-one tackles when people broke through, stuff like that. I think it was interesting, but I don't know if you can completely blame New Zealand finding a massive hole like that and then finishing it off, because that's just what New Zealand do. Yeah,
they always do that. It was impressive. Look, possibly the reason why New Zealand were able to do that in the first half is because Ireland had something like 80% of the possession at some point, up to the 30-minute mark. It was something ridiculous like that, and the Kiwis just didn't get a chance because they didn't give them the ball, which is a credit to the Irish pack and Murray distributed it properly so that the ball wouldn't get into danger in the
and that comes down again to Murray's isolation of where to put the ball. He never actually put a player under pressure because he was putting it in the right places at the right time. Sorry, got myself a cough there. So that was the Irish success, and obviously it was phenomenal. And Henshaw's final try, I think everybody was cheering that in a Northern Hemisphere kind of way.
I didn't see that much of Jared Payne during the match, but yeah.
No, that's true actually. Now you've said that, and although Trimble existed, he didn't really do that much. Defensively, he might have been there, and I think he had one good carry maybe.
Yeah.
But I can't remember much else. They didn't use the wingers as much as perhaps they normally do.
Yeah, they sort of kept it safe.
So if we want to bounce on from that amazing Irish success to the Welsh failure, shall we say?
Mauling.
The mauling. Should we pick out a player? Well, we've picked out a player.
Moriarty.
Yeah, we've picked.
Even though he was
we picked out Moriarty as being the only shining light, perhaps, in that Welsh team.
Bigger wasn't even clicking, and that's saying something for the last few years. For Wales anyway. He's not done great at times for Ospreys, but for Wales recently, he's been pretty solid. Well, maybe I guess in New Zealand, he wasn't so great.
I felt like Bigger for a while, and even again in the Rugby World Cup, he was carrying the team a bit with his kicking. He was putting people on his back and actually putting the points on the board. Where, I don't know, credit to Wales in the Rugby World Cup. They played out of their skin. They played perhaps above their station. Now they're playing. But
are you just saying that as an Englishman?
As an Englishman, I am. But now, but now I feel they're playing right below it. They are much better than what they are playing at the level they're playing at now.
Yeah.
And I think in part that's due to, I don't know, Bigger's off the boil maybe, and he can't carry as much as he used to. So it is falling on other players. And obviously with JD2 getting injured just before the game, it wasn't a great.
Scott Williams is a good player. I guess they actually did break through the channels a bit more, so maybe not so great.
Yeah.
Should have been having a look to see where he was when Kuradrani was breaking through outside, and Falau. Yeah, and Hodge had a good game for the Aussies as well.
And I think, that he did have a good game. The Aussie attacking line was actually very incisive. It went straight through that Welsh back line so many times. And Halfpenny had to stick his head in all sorts of places to try and stop them.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him because he's only really getting back into form this season, with Toulon, and then coming back to that sort of pummeling from Australia. That's something for your first. Well, he didn't play in the summer for Wales because he wanted to get back to match fitness for Toulon, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this is his first game back for Wales.
First game back, and he's literally hammered. As not well. I mean, they did get beat. It was it was a reasonably flattering scoreline for Wales, maybe, because I think Australia could have scored a lot more points.
Yeah, I remember I told my brother like about what the game was like, and he saw the scoreline and he didn't think it was that bad, but then like he didn't see the game, so
yeah,
it was really something like with the first 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't see it, you don't see it, but it's it was quite a shock to see how easily Australia were running through, considering how much of a trouble that backline's had trying to break through a New Zealand and South African defence. So I think perhaps the Welsh, I don't know who the Welsh defensive coach is, but they might need a little bit of a talking to.
Sure.
But we could
try to think of the defensive coach. Sean Edwards? No.
I don't know. I don't think, is it Sean Edwards? It might be.
Yeah.
It sounds like it would be Sean Edwards, actually, now that you've mentioned it. So, yeah. But he would be actually fuming to hear that I think he's not doing a good job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's a pretty well respected coach.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can move on from that again. The Welsh failure, as I have it written down, to the Scottish ambition, and that's why you're here.
Yeah.
That's what I want to talk about.
Scotland have got another autumn internationals ahead of them, filled with optimism, as always with Scotland. Maybe misplaced optimism, but we'll see. I'm a little bit worried about Australia after seeing as how they did against Wales. I don't think we're anywhere near as good as a team as Wales, so like we're going to struggle in some aspects. Like the one key player we're missing is going to be Nell, because we need Nell. Like it's so essential that we have Nell on the team. Ferguson is a good quality player, but he's young and he's only 20. He's coming up to 21, I think.
All right.
And he's going to be starting at tight head for Scotland, so that's a big step up. He's good in the loose, but he's good at club level for in the scrum, but like going up against who's Scott Seal probably for Australia.
Yeah.
You said that's going to be a tough start for him.
CO, so for me, and I was talking to Barbs last week about it on, was it last week? Anyway, I was talking to Barbs about it, our Australian, and he was really pointing out that CO at scrum time, he's not actually that great, but because his technique's letting him down essentially. So if Scotland can actually utilise their strength, hopefully, in the front row, but you're obviously a little bit worried about it.
Like I think Dickinson is also a bit of a worry as well, and like our first choice front row would be Dickinson forwards now, and we're going to lose 2 out of that, and well possibly 2, so we'll see. Like, and we don't have like, I'm not sure if we have the biggest chunkiest locks to an extent. Like,
whereas your depth isn't as good, and that's another thing that we want to talk about later, perhaps. Yeah. But it's all about the number of pro clubs you have. At the end of the day,
we've got a few done in England as well, but like they're nowhere near enough to sort of pad that out. We've not got like how the Georgians have the whole front row and everything playing in France, and they've got loads and loads of choices there. But like we've not got that many players down in England. Be good. London Scottish could be good for the future, but they're still like they're not even doing that well in the Championship at the moment.
Yeah, they've got to pick it up a bit before you see that as a viable option, I think. I mean, from my point of view, London Scottish really need to pick it up, because you guys need them. If that's going to exist as an outlet, then
I'm not sure if they're planning to make them a Premiership club, but like they should be a like higher up Championship club. And they've got a few good players at the moment, like from the Scottish academies. They've got Ali Miller, they've got Hugh Fraser, Cammy Fenton, Patrick Kelly, Tom Galbraith. They did have Ben Robbins, but he's back playing in the Scottish Premiership at the moment, so it's a good ground for breeding talent. But we're not they're not really at the quality we want them to be yet.
So you're talking about obviously using London Scottish, so that'll bring us on to the point where that third pro team that they were trying to create in the Borders. Do you want to talk to me anything about that, and what you think is the viable options for creating a third club in?
Well, as some people know, they've just opened up the pro teams for outside investment. So like before now, all the teams were for the union owned, and they've just had a vote, and it was passed almost, I think it was unanimously, that they would outside investment come in. And in the past, Scotland have had a bit of trouble with this. There was a bit of problem with Edinburgh in the mid 2000s. The Carruthers brothers took it over, and they had some success under like Andy Robertson, and it was arguably one of Edinburgh's best periods in the league. But they fell out with the Scottish Rugby Union, and then as a result of the union having to take control of Edinburgh again, they had to let the borders go bust, and basically merged all the borders players mostly into the Glasgow setup. So that actually in a way made Glasgow a far better team, like, and that sort of set up Glasgow for the team they are now. But
yeah, I can see that.
It's a bit of a shame, like, with what happened. So a third pro team is maybe a faraway dream to an extent, like, and if one of the pro teams gets a significant amount of investment and the SRU don't have to worry about them, it could be a viable option. But you were mentioning the borders, maybe not the borders, because the borders don't really have a big population centre. They've got Galashiels, and to be honest, Galashiels is not that big, and it's I think I had a look and it was like 12,000 people live there.
Okay.
And it's tiny. So
and it's all spread out, obviously.
Yeah, like all the population is spread out. So it really is where like the heart of like Scottish rugby is, like, especially at like the sort of grassroots, like non-private school level. But yeah, it's difficult. Aberdeen does have promise because there's like a lot of chances to get outside investment from like Aberdeen Asset Management, which have shown a lot of interest in supporting Scottish rugby in the past. There was this their owner said that like about 2 years ago that he would pay to have a team in Aberdeen, and that he would back them. But yeah, it would cost a lot to set up a third team, and we. At the moment, we are bringing through more players through our new academy system to throw out like a third pro team, so it could be done possibly, but it would really weaken the two current pro teams if we did it.
Yeah, I think so. From just living and working in an area not near to Aberdeen, because I don't think anything's really near to Aberdeen, but there's just been a lot of talk about how obviously the oil industry is not doing as great anymore and the money is not perhaps as great. I'm just wondering if someone would want to invest in Aberdeen at this point in time.
Yeah, Aberdeen is still a rich city.
Yeah,
like, it's
I know that.
Like some of the richest streets in Scotland are in Aberdeen. But yeah, it's a difficult situation. Like if there was a Caledonia team, which would be the region that Aberdeen are in, they could also play games at Stirling, which probably has the strongest sort of rugby tradition or like current rugby culture in like the sort of Caledonia region. But it's difficult. Like yeah, you either go for Stirling and you don't really have like the sort of outside investment and a smaller population, but you have a bit of rugby culture, or you go to Aberdeen, where Aberdeen Football Club sort of dominate, but
yeah,
there isn't that much of a rugby culture.
All right, no, and I mean that's an interesting insight, to be honest with you, because I didn't know much about Stirling having such strong ties.
They've got a good club team. Like they're the only club team from the Caledonia region that's in the Scottish Premiership, and they've got a few more clubs around it. Like when they last had, this is going way back to like the early 2000s, when they had the Caledonia Reds going, they had two homes. They had McDiarmid Park in Perth, and then it's still far away from Stirling, and they played in Aberdeen as well. So. But that's always been a bit of a problem, having two home venues. Most teams moved away from that.
All right. If we wanted to just move on from the club scene in Scotland back to the international, and obviously Vern Cotter, if you wanted to.
Yeah, so Cotter's on a sort of limited stay now in Scotland. Like he's only going to be in Scotland till June. And he's going to take Scotland through the Autumn Internationals, then Six Nations, and then Gregor Townsend is going to take over. And they're going to change around the coaching staff completely. Like Matt Taylor and Dan McFarland are going to join Gregor Townsend in the Scotland setup. while Jason O'Halloran and Jonathan Humphreys are going to go to Glasgow to join Dave Rennie. And you might know they've worked under Dave Rennie for the Chiefs before, so there's a bit of a link up there. And they've had quite a lot of success there, so that'll probably help Glasgow, which is annoying as an Edinburgh fan. Glasgow getting all the nice toys again.
But it's gonna be good. I think that'll be overall a good thing for Scottish rugby, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hopefully. It
should be good. Cotter is also going to Montpellier, which big money Montpellier Fontaine or whatever they're called, but it's maybe not going to be Montpellier Fontaine anymore since Jake White's leaving. And he's maybe going to take Nathan Hines with him.
Oh, okay.
Because they formed a bit of a coaching partnership.
So this is interesting to see, because obviously in football they often talk about how someone will bring in all their coaches and their systems when they move in, and it's becoming perhaps quite similar in rugby in that way. Mm-hmm. Coaching systems will kind of move together.
Matt Taylor has been involved in the Scotland team before. Like he was certainly involved. I'm not sure if he was involved at the World Cup or not, but he's been involved in like previous summer tours and that. So, like, it's not like he's a completely new inductee. And Gregor Townsend was sort of an assistant under Scott Johnson and Andy Robinson.
All right, yeah. And obviously Andy Robinson oversaw quite a successful period. So. Mm-hmm. So hopefully they can rebring that, but as you said earlier, that was mainly down to the borders. And my final question to you is, how much do you really, really want to beat Australia at the weekend?
It would be good. We've had a few good wins over Australia in actually the last few years. We beat them once when Gitto's kicking wasn't on form. It was a wet and it was windy night in November, and it was like a low scoring game. Australia got the only try of the game, but Gitto's kicking basically won it for us a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think we had another win like not too long ago either. But it's Scotland don't actually have too bad a record against Australia and South Africa. They've got 2 wins against both of them in recent memory.
Oh, there's nowhere near the Scotland, and it's weird because Scotland don't have the problem that obviously Wales do. And I was warned not to go too negative on the Welsh. I even warned myself not to go too negative on the Welsh, but
CC saying that.
But my God, their mentality against Southern Hemisphere teams, I don't know what happens to them, but
they often do this in the autumn internationals. Like there was what was it? The last time they won the Six Nations, they lost to Samoa in the autumn internationals beforehand, or it might have been the year before that.
Yeah, it's just I don't know where it comes from. I can only put it down to Gatland plays a certain way that apparently doesn't beat Southern Hemisphere teams ever. And I know obviously Howley was overseeing the Welsh setup this time, but I still can't get away from it.
There's an interesting thing linking both the Welsh setup and the Scottish setup. Like Gregor Townsend's been linked with the Lions job, the top Lions job, like the attacking coach.
Oh, really?
Role
okay.
For the Lions, and they're talking about having 2 attacking coaches, Rob Howley and Gregor Townsend, which sounds a bit overkill to me, and it's a bit strange if Gregor Townsend is meant to be taking over the Scotland job that June to take him away straight away, and that could really sort of hamper his start to the Scotland job to an extent, because he's already going to only have 2 years before the next World Cup, and then he's going to lose out on another campaign if he's away with the Lions.
I mean, that seems completely bizarre. I don't really understand that. For me,
it's what I saw on the paper,
I'd prefer just to have Gregor Townsend without Rob Howley. If that's an option, but obviously he should be just dealing with the Scottish system.
Yeah.
My other issue with that is that maybe it's a way of getting more Scottish players to play in the Lions team.
Because we're being pretty underrepresented.
I think it's really unfair the fact that you've been underrepresented in the Lions, to be honest with you, because I'm looking at the players that you've got now, and obviously Bennett, Dunbar, Russell, Hogg. You've got the Gray brothers, and And there's plenty of players that I think the Scots could definitely field in a Lions team.
Mm-hmm. Nell, if he's fit, would probably be a dead set to be in a Lions team. Hogg as well. But then you were mentioning like Dunbar, Bennett, and the Gray brothers. They're both in positions where there's a lot of depth in other nations as well. And Gatland will also have his favourites of the Welsh centres, which will be like kind of push out Dunbar and Bennett to an extent maybe.
I mean, we've seen that with Ireland with O'Driscoll not getting picked and stuff like that. But I look at it and I don't fully understand how he's allowed so much autonomy over a Lions team that is meant to be a shared nation kind of thing. Yeah,
but I've got to say, what was it? Not the tour to Australia, but the tour to South Africa. Probably at the time we didn't have the players who sort of deserved to be on the Lions tour to extent. Like I think only one of the matches Ross Ford was on the bench, or maybe for two of the matches, but there were no other Scots involved.
Yeah.
In that one, but it's a bit of an improvement.
But that's another thing that slightly annoys me. Not necessarily about the Lions, but in general, the part-time rugby fan, and obviously we can't blame Gatland for this because he won't be a part-time rugby fan. But a part-time rugby fan will stare at the history of Scotland perhaps and say, look, they've never had any players. Why would they have any players that can play this time round? So it's perfectly fine that they shouldn't be picked. But there's genuine talents that are playing, and I think is Bennett playing for? I forgot.
Glasgow.
He's playing for Glasgow at the moment. See, and Glasgow have obviously had they won the Pro 12 previous years. So
the year before,
you're looking at players that do have the pedigree of success. They do genuinely have talent, and people who are historically just saying, it's just Scotland. It doesn't matter. They don't have any players. It's frustrating from the point of view of seeing these talents, seeing they're able to play, and then not given the opportunity on the biggest stage.
We've actually got a few good winners at the moment. Tommy Seymour, certainly, he's got 7 tries. He's the leading try scorer in the Pro 12 at the moment.
Yep.
With 7 tries, and 6 of them were in the first 2 games, and it's not been as good since then. So he would be another one, but. Yeah, it's a shame. Like each year, there are Scots generally I think that don't take as much interest in the Lions just because there's not as many Scots involved.
100%.
Yeah, so it's a bit of an issue with that.
I think it's also for the cynic in me who gets annoyed at. Well, I also look at it as a marketing thing, perhaps. And obviously, Gatland's Welsh. England have possibly the most eyes on screens to look at the Lions team, so they've got to advertise it and market it towards the English. The Irish is a whole new market, pretty big market, so they'll play a decent number of Irish players. I just don't think they give much respect to the Scottish market. I don't know. I think it gets undersold a lot.
Yeah, it's a bit of a problem, but Scotland also do have the smallest, certainly the smallest support of any of the home nations. Because rugby is a distant second to football here, much more so. Like Wales, it's definitely rugby's neck and neck with football. England, there's just that many people that rugby's gonna make money no matter what. And then Ireland has really taken to the sort of pro scene in recent years.
Yeah.
And Scotland don't have that as much, apart from around Glasgow. There is a bit of a club culture there now,
which is good, and obviously that win in the Pro 12 is going to help spur them on, and build more grassroots rugby around Glasgow, and hopefully that will just keep getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, there's we do have a few good players coming through the ranks at the moment. Have you heard about Magnus Bradbury?
I heard the name, but I don't know much about him.
He's been a real shining light of the Edinburgh team this year. He's got 4 tries so far, and he's
I do know Magnus Bradbury. Sorry, I've got him in my fantasy team because I really like him. He's the 21-year-old, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's he was really he was coming through into the team at the same time as Jamie Ritchie, and last year Jamie Ritchie was the one that was getting all the starts, the sort of young gun that was getting the shots. But this year Bradbury's really sort of taken over, and he's really shown. He's keeping Cornell Dupuis out of the team, and he was he's actually Scottish qualified now, but he's not made the Scotland team. Like, it was like Scotland have been like sort of nurturing him for the last 3 years, expecting him to get into the Scotland
and now
team.
he's not made it.
And now he's not made it, like for this for the autumn internationals. And Bradbury hasn't made it either, which is a bit controversial. But
well, he scored a fantastic try at the weekend as well.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited for his future as well, because I think I'm trying to think of who was the last big carrying number 8 that you guys had.
Denton for a while, I guess, but like that's,
yeah,
I'm not sure.
I think Denton's a big carrying 8. He had other flaws that perhaps let his game down.
His hands were quite.
Yeah, you needed to stick it in his gut and hope that he held on to it.
Like there were a few times his balls were kicked to him and he just fumbled it on, like, embarrassingly in our 22 or something like that.
Yeah.
And there were a few times like that.
Did Denton go south? Was he in England?
Yeah, he's at Bath.
Yeah.
Which
injured.
It's a bit of an interesting. Yeah, he's injured, and it's a bit of an interesting decision because he's behind Falatau now at Bath.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, he'd probably want to be the starting 8 at any club he went to, but he's picked Bath and
Bath. They've got Francois Lowe, Denton, Falatau, and
Leroy Houston for the moment as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big. I mean, he's probably learning his trade quite well in training and everything, but I can't see him, even when he gets back from injury, starting that many games.
He was being played at 7, which was weird. Like Bath had him, like they've had him playing in lock, and like for Edinburgh he never played anywhere else apart from me. And like Bath have been moving him all over the place. Trying to
find out if they can fit him in. It's well, so you said he's been playing at lock. Has it been playing with Atwood? Well, obviously when he wasn't injured, but was he playing with Atwood at lock?
I think he might have been. I'm not sure if it was just because it
might have been an injury.
It was last year, so it might. Okay. Wasn't Atwood injured last year? So
he was injured for a large period as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Falatau being injured, you brought up Bath now, so I'm just going to talk about Falatau. Falatau being injured was interesting to me because everybody seems to think that he hasn't missed any Welsh games due to injury, and this was the first Welsh. It's the first one he's missed.
Put Wales in a bit of a pickle, which is Moriarty stepped up well though. We've talked about this already, but there were loads of people talking about putting Warburton at 8, and that was a bit weird.
And Warburton's only just come back to start playing again. In the Pro 12, so obviously him starting straight at 8 would have been a bit strange.
Is he expected to be fit for the next Wales game?
I'm actually not sure. I don't know who Wales are playing even. And see, this is why
I think they're playing South Africa.
This is why the illness that has struck Ed down is actually a problem, because he's the encyclopedia of random games.
They're playing Argentina.
They're playing Argentina, so they're going to have to try and contain Isa then, aren't they? Or Isa.
Yeah, if we can do Isa. Yeah.
Because he's an absolute monster at the moment. Did you watch much Super Rugby?
I watched a bit. Like, I've mostly just kept up to date with it from a fantasy team. Yeah, what were you going to ask about? Like with the Aguiaras or?
Well, I was just interested because obviously they're trying to market themselves. Super Rugby is obviously trying to market themselves on a global platform. There's a lot of talk about whether they want to move to the USA or whether they want to move to certain places. So it's just interesting to see who is actually interested in watching for what reason. And if you're like myself, I was following it for the fantasy because that was quite fun. I also enjoy watching Super Rugby on a morning. It was all right. But
it was
I don't know.
It was a real thing to watch. Like when I was a kid, like everyone in my minis team would go to training and then watch Super Rugby afterwards in the afternoon, or WWE. But
those, and you're right actually, because I remember if there was a late kickoff on a Saturday or something, I'd be watching the game. I'd be watching the Super Rugby game in the morning, and it would be great fun watching this crazy running rugby. And watching it on a sunny field in Australia or South Africa, and just thinking, man, if only we could do that, and then going to play in the mud pit that was the local school, thing. And I was just like, okay, yeah, we're not going to get away with any of that here.
Oh, it was brilliant when people tried to imitate John Longmuir or Maga or someone like that. back in the day as well.
Yeah.
Like
they'd shout
really
Lomu, and then they try and smash through a couple of people, and it didn't work that well. No, I'm interested in Super Rugby. I think there's a lot of I don't know how to put it. It's not really. I'm going to try and describe it as best I can, but I think it's just English snobbery. In that they're quite happy, they've got money, they're not interested in perhaps broadening the game to as many places as possible unless it's profitable. And the rest of perhaps the world is a little bit more, we want to find a way to make it profitable, but that equals expanding it to new markets. And everybody's looking at America and going, look, there's a hell of a lot of you, do you want to play our sport?
See, I'm a bit weird about the sort of American obsession of late. Like, with the World Cup being in Japan in 2019, I think we should be really talking about Japan more. And like, they seem to be taking all this sort of style games to America at the moment. And Japan got Argentina this year, and Argentina are a good team, but they're not like the blockbuster team. And New Zealand went there 3 years ago, I think it was, to Japan. And that was a big thing then, but they've went back to the USA twice in the last 2 years for some reason. And I know that's because of sponsors and things like that. But
they can sell it for, obviously, I think it's 65,000 stadium or something like that. That's how many were in there.
But they've Japan gets consistently bigger crowds for like other internationals as well. Like if you go down to like the USA's games against Italy and Scotland, and like they get about 20,000 maybe at most. Well, like Japan, like they've owned their own stadium as well, the Japanese Union, and then they've got massive stadiums like the Toyota City Stadium where Scotland played in the summer. That's a big one. They didn't sell it out for that, and they've got like the big Yokohama Stadium, I think it is, the one where they hosted the Football World Cup final, like in 2002.
Right.
So they've got big stadiums that they could put games in there as well.
So maybe we need to go and have a word with whoever's organising Super Rugby and say, look, we know you've given Japan a franchise, but perhaps you need to actually invest a little bit more in giving them something, throw them a bone essentially, and say, look, can you make us profitable? Because they've got a market, and Japanese fan. I mean, I only know this through stereotypes, but they seem pretty diehard. Like they're going to turn up, they're going to fill the stadium, spend their money on tickets and everything, and go home.
They seem to buy the strip and everything. Like they don't turn up in like their jackets and everything like you see at Scotland matches. A crowd filled with like brown and grey coats, while like Japanese are decked out in red and white. Yeah,
painted faces, and the fanatical fan are the ones you want. They're the ones that spend the money. And you're 100% correct. They're wearing the kit. They're standing front stage, trying to get their attention on the camera, trying to cheer.
Some wearing scrum caps in the crowd as well, which is a bit weird. I remember seeing that.
So do you reckon that comes from the anime situation, where they're like, "Oh, that's the uniform"?
Please say you didn't watch the anime for rugby, did you?
No, I watched I just saw that GIF that was posted.
But they actually did a show or something like that with it.
I've forgotten the name. It's not Full House or something. I've forgotten what the name is anyway. But no, I just know it exists. I haven't actually seen it. I think someone was commenting that it seemed a bit over sexualized.
Yeah.
Which I just thought was the majority of Japanese anime. To be honest with you.
Anime, yeah.
That's just the way it is. As long as it's equal and fair, we just have to put up with that as being the culture, I suppose.
All right.
Well, that's the thing. Normally this is a completely random subject, but normally in a Japanese anime, it's always the schoolgirls that are being weirdly over-sexualized, but now it's schoolboys playing rugby that are being overly sexualized.
Okay, sure.
So, it's equal and weird in equal helpings.
I'm guessing this isn't going to be in the podcast.
Oh, this will be in the podcast.
This will be the podcast.
We'll shove this in. We shove we can edit out anything. I was thinking to edit out all the other bits, and then we just talk about this. Talk about this. This doesn't need to be so.
Get all the anime fans in here. There's plenty of them on Reddit.
I bet that's probably a huge market. I was looking at it, and just from obviously over browsing the sub, we were talking about this earlier. Perhaps we use the sub too much. But I was looking at the other day, there's 190 people online on average. I went on R Sports in what could be considered the middle of a night in America, and it was something like 600 people just randomly online.
Really? Oh.
I was thinking they've got 3 times the engagement on a sub that doesn't necessarily have a specific purpose, apart from...
That's interesting, because I always think when I go on our sports, it's often quite empty in a way. Like, it's they don't seem to fill it up with that much comment. I think the moderators do take off a lot of the posts, like especially if people are trying to over promote like their subreddit, so it's something that we have to watch to an extent. But it's interesting that, because like you'll see loads of posts that have hardly any comments, and then there's like 3 at the top that have like thousands of upvotes, and which is good about this Ireland win, getting a bit of attention.
Yeah, and obviously CC got all of his karma, and he was happy with that.
Stealing the karma.
Yeah.
I saw that.
He and it's quite interesting to see how that's done, though, because to me, like you said, it is quite empty, because it doesn't have a specific purpose. I think for a community to thrive, people need to have a common interest, and obviously in the sports community, it's a very generic, like, we like sports. It's not obviously it's a default, isn't it? Everyone's auto subscribed.
Yeah. It didn't used to be, but they sort of made it a default about a year ago or so.
It's which is interesting, and obviously it's a good way to try and promote different things, but it's not necessarily the perfect way to do things. I was just thinking that in the same respect, this American cell and this Japanese cell, obviously it's quite good that the Japanese are actually created an anime. They appear to be trying to integrate it within their culture almost.
Put Goromaru in every single advert going.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think that might be a flaw with how it's being advertised in America. Everyone appears to, in America, want to go, oh, it's like football, but they don't wear pads, and they do this and this instead. And rather than try and force it to be appearing to be something else, it really does need to be and live and thrive on its own. It's all very well trying to introduce someone to it that way. But the actual advertisement for it, I think it needs to be more specific and say, look, this is rugby, this is what it does. It's not just, because I think it's being sold almost like a knockoff football.
Yeah.
Which isn't doing it any favours.
There's a lot of people trying to, like, I'm not sure how true this is to extent, but there's a lot of people trying to pass it off as a much safer version of football, and in some ways I can see that, but there's like risks with any sort of contact sport.
It's not at all.
And it's quite
a dangerous thing to be putting out there, to be honest with you. Especially I did I saw on, I can't remember if it was Our Science or something, I saw a scientific post on a journal that I managed to get access to, but essentially it was showing that these professional footballers, I think they're professional footballers, they went and did a trial to see, based on their memory and their responses to questions, whether a heading training session actually affected their mental state. And it actually found to have quite significant negative effects on memory, to have a reasonably intensive heading session.
Yeah, this is our football you're talking
about. For soccer, shall we say, for the soccer, American audience. To have a reasonably so.
Because I saw that on the news.
If you're having that level of that impact, I would say I wouldn't say that a headed football is particularly. I mean, it is an impact, but when you consider it to some of the impacts that you can have in rugby and American football, they're fairly minimal. Yeah.
Like, I can certainly see, like, in the 60s and 70s when he had big leather balls and, like, it was, like, the equipment wasn't as good, it was far rougher, the games, like, that could cause a bit of injury back then, but football has definitely been a lot domesticated. It's far lighter and nowhere near as tough on the head.
Yeah, but it's a worrying thing, and I'm not sure, I mean, obviously they'll need to check it and do some cross trials or whatever they need to do, but I don't know how public it's going to become if it is a genuine issue for causing brain damage and causing actual lifelong problems. I think football's not going to change, but I think rugby can certainly look at the impacts that's happening to people and how they're responding in later life, because it will affect people.
Yeah, there was another study I saw recently, and they were sort of questioning, like, this was going another way, and they were saying, like, amongst adults, it wasn't like, I think they were testing people in their 40s and that, or something like that, and the majority of them didn't have that long a lasting effect, but obviously there's some people that are more susceptible to concussions than others, but yeah, you can't take that on its own.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's weird to say this, but I think it is actually a long-term problem that rugby needs to focus on. And I think fronting up to it and saying, look, we need to teach good tackling technique, we need to teach X, Y, Z to try and minimise all these impacts is the way. And I think the way that they're going, maybe that will come through, hopefully. But I'm not sure. Obviously, it's going to be talked about today.
World Rugby seemed quite defensive about this, like with the remember about a year ago there was some doctors that suggested that tackling should be removed from all rugby below like
a certain age,
16 or something like that. Yeah.
Well, isn't it?
And that was
is it Aussie or New Zealand? They don't tackle until 11. It's touch until 11.
Possibly, yeah. And like arguably in that way that helps them develop their ball handling skills and like spatial awareness.
Is it touch till 14 maybe even? Sorry, because to me a child is obviously still developing up until around 14. At 14, 16, even later than that, they're still developing, and obviously they've got weight divisions perhaps in the Southern Hemisphere.
Is that just New Zealand, or is that the South Africa and Australia as well?
Well, I think Australia might as well. I'm not sure.
I've only heard about it in New Zealand.
I think Australia might have it. I haven't heard about it in South Africa. I know that the private schools in Oxford and Cambridge, they used to have a weight or a lightweights division in their universities, which was quite interesting. I'd never really heard about it.
Is that lightweight for drinking or for playing?
Yeah, a bunch of skinny lightweights who are a little bit wet, who don't want to essentially.
Just with university rugby, that's what an important distinction.
It is. Uni rugby is. I couldn't. I don't know. I'm quite happy to be away from that culture now. Actually, it's quite interesting looking back at it.
Yeah, I avoided it. I played all the way through school, and then like I've heard all the rumors about what it was like at uni, and then it wasn't for me.
No, I got that similar vibe, to be fair, and it was good all through school. I enjoyed all through school, and I played club rugby for for 2 clubs at university, and no, it was good. I've enjoyed that, but obviously the drinking culture that comes with university is going to be a negative side effect, and I think again that's crossed over to America, the drinking culture, and I think quite a lot of people are reacting negatively to that because America are quite, I don't know, they have a
teetotal.
They have a detesting for drinking in some cases. Certain areas of society, perhaps in America, aren't very into it.
That's interesting to an extent because like there's other clubs like Brigham Young University. Have you heard about that?
But go ahead.
They're the big Mormon university in Utah.
Okay.
And they've got one of the best rugby teams in America, as far as I'm aware, amongst universities. It's largely because they get so many Pacific Islanders and Kiwis come over, because a lot of them come to do their church mission back in Utah or classic. Get study there, and then they have one of the strongest teams because of that. There's is it Chicago Bears, the NFL team, or Chicago. The Chicago
sounds right. Yeah, Chicago Bears. Yeah.
One of their players is a Kiwi who went over to Brigham Young University, played rugby there, but then got scouted by or switched over to American football and got a NFL contract.
All right.
So yeah, there's quite a few people like
That's
that.
quite interesting. And are Mormons teetotal? I don't know enough about Mormons, but Mormons are teetotal. Okay, cool.
They generally avoid things like coffee, I think, even.
All right.
Yeah, because they see it as they don't want any drugs in their body, but they're pretty determined when they put their mind to it by the sense of it, especially with things like rugby and things like that.
It's quite interesting. Right, I think we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, we kind of got off of topic.
Just talking about Mormons in in Utah.
Yeah.
I didn't even know Mormons were. I don't know enough about Mormons. I'll be honest. I knew that Mitt Romney was a Mormon. Was he? Yeah, that's all I knew.
That's like the sort of cultural center for Mormons in America, Utah.
It's quite.
And Idaho.
It's quite interesting. Again, that takes me back to having a very specific purpose. I don't know. I think that can be quite a positive thing. And obviously, if Utah is wanting a very specific purpose, maybe pro rugby should take their.
Yeah, possibly Salt Lake City. There's they've got a MLS team, but I'm not sure about if they've got any other big sports franchises. Utah Jazz as well. They've got that.
Right.
But
let's wrap it up. I'm going to talk. Next week, hopefully, we're going to be talking about all the drama that's been happening in Canada. Perhaps some of the drama that's been happening more in North America with a little bit more structure than what we just tried to figure out here.
We led on to it, so
that's perfect. Yeah, next week's going to be brilliant. Yeah. Right, so tune in next week, subscribe, do all those things. I normally forget all of this spiel. The outro music's probably playing at some point. So yeah, woo. And CC's just talking to you in the chat, so we'll just end the recording there.
Yep, press the yellow button.
Press the yellow button.